And Matt Damon was famously in The Bachelor as well, so that was also another movie that he was in.
Welcome to Gold, Diamonds, and Death, a James Bond podcast. I am your 00 host, Jonathan Watkins. I am a writer for all things under the Cinemasins brand name and a co-host of Behind the Scenes podcast. Joining me each and every week for this endeavor, he's the co-founder of Cinemasins, co-host of the weekly podcast Recotopia, and while he's not from the UK, many have compared him to a stiff-ass Brit. And he's also one of my good friends, Mr. Chris Atkinson.
This is
How's
news to me. This is news to me. I've never heard that before. If people are saying that behind my back a lot, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, hello.
We are going to talk about Goldeneye, or Goldeneye, however you want to say that. So let's just this will be fun. Let's just get into it. Got a lot of behind the scenes things to talk about this week, which is good. Which is okay though. It'll still be about the same because we don't have a book segment. So
and this will be I think this is going to start I don't know what you want to say. This is going to start a string probably until we get to the end of where they stopped making the traditional making of Bond featurettes on the discs. So they had on this one, they had a video diary that I watched that is about 14 or 15 minutes, but not the same ones that I had been seeing all the way up into this point that were narrated by Patrick McNee. And so for the first time, I'm not hearing from the producers or the writers or anything like that on a podcast. And so I'm going to have to just take your word for it on everything, Jonathan.
Well, let's get into the behind the scenes. Our segment we like to call Eon Flux.
This is a journey.
I'm gonna make a movie!
We have to go back, Kate.
Wow, how did you know all that stuff?
I did my research.
I don't understand any of this.
What the fuck is going on?
We are going to scour through the history of Eon Productions and give you all the highs and lows that went into the makings of these films. We are talking about Goldeneye today. Goldeneye is the 17th film, which is crazy, in the official franchise. The 19th we've covered, but it's the 17th film in the franchise. It is the first of 4 to star Pierce Brosnan, so we're going to be with Pierce for a few weeks. It is the first of 2 to be directed by Martin Campbell, and I really hope they bring Martin Campbell to direct the next one, because if they do, he will have directed the first film for 3 Bonds in a row, because he directs Casino Royale. And it's the first film to have none of the story elements from any of Ian Fleming's novels or short stories. There's nothing in this that they take from a piece of his writing. It's named after actually Ian Fleming's house in the Bahamas, mansion, whatever it is, but that was called Goldeneye. The film was released 6 years after the last one. We talked about this a little bit last week, but it's the longest gap, which is amazing because these have been going since, depending on where you live, country-wise, 62 or 63. That's insane that there's only been, a 6-year gap is the longest, and still is, and might always be. Depends on how quickly they get this next one going, I guess. I think because I think there's a 4-year difference between Die Another Day and Casino Royale, and then I think maybe there was like a 3-year difference between a couple of the Craigs, but never to this level. It's the first film not to be produced by Albert Broccoli. We talked about that last week. We said it was the last film. License to Kill was his last film. He passed away in '96, but he was still around a little bit, but he did not take on any of the heavy producing duties. His daughter, Barbara, who, as far as I know, is still there, takes over, and then Michael G. Wilson is still hanging out. But it's the first Bond released after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. That was interesting because Bond kind of was a Cold War type franchise, especially getting into like the 70s and 80s, and so that was kind of a change. And they actually used that as kind of the backdrop of what's going on in Goldeneye. Which we'll talk about later. So the film premiered November 13th, 1995. It premiered here, in not Tennessee, but in the United States at Radio City Music Hall. And the general release started a couple days later on November 7th, or 4 days later on November 17th. The UK premiere was on November 21st, and the general release was on the 24th. Film had a worldwide gross of a little over $350 million, so it was a big hit. Although domestically, it only made 106, which, mind you, I looked at the top 10. Toy Story was the number one, and it only had 191 million. So this is still we're not to the point where the number one movie is making like 700 million or whatever, or even like 300 or 400 million. We're still kind of in that. There's only usually 7 or 8 movies that make 100 million, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Titanic is the one anomaly, but that comes out in the 90s, and that was like, that was an insane. Obviously there were more that made it, and it hit the 200 million mark, but in 1995, 106 million was bona fide. Like 100 million actually meant something back then. So
exactly. You had your top 10. You had Toy Story, Batman Forever was number 2, Apollo 13, Pocahontas, Casper, and then Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls actually finished and then Goldeneye. I forgot Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls was that big of a hit.
I think it made most of that on its opening weekend.
Then you had 7 and Die Hard with a Vengeance. So that was your top 10. And all those made 100, but I think like 7 and Die Hard were both like right at 100.
Yeah.
But anyways.
I think Crimson Tide may have been just underneath that, like 11 or 12, somewhere around there.
It was definitely in that arena. It's the most successful Bond film if you factor in inflation. It was the most profitable one since Moonraker, if you factored in inflation, which makes sense because Moonraker was a pretty big hit, and obviously it made a lot more than the Timothy Dalton movies did. It also was made on a pretty small budget. I actually at first read 60 million, but then in the Nobody Does It Better book, which is where I'm getting some of this information from, as I mentioned at the top, it said it was like 49 million was the budget. So that's what Martin Campbell said. Even for a movie in 1994, whenever they started filming this, that's not high at all.
No, it's interesting. Not that this makes a difference on the cost at all. They were filming this in 1995. That's how insane.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Their production schedule is like. I think there's a moment in the video diary that Brosnan says something that alludes to the fact that it's 1995, but they have footage of some of the stunts being made, and all the time codes are March of 1995 or February of 1995. They crank these movies out, man. Like, like a movie like this today, it feels like they would make it and then they'd spend a year in post-production, and it would be a full year and a half before the movie came out. But I don't know.
Well, and they were kind of like, part of it was, I read a few different things, but part of it was that, which I'll get into this when I get to production, but part of it is, some people wanted Dalton to do another one and some people didn't. Like the Broccoli's and Wilson. I don't remember. I didn't read too much about him, but I know that Cubby, Albert Broccoli, he really wanted to give Dalton his third movie because he had signed a contract for 3 movies. He wanted to give him another chance. They really liked Dalton. And then there was one of the Jeff Kleeman, who was the vice president of production at MGMUA, him and the president, they liked Dalton. Kleeman actually said like something along the lines of Dalton actually felt like Bond in real life. Like he had a really good sense of humor. He was really suave, but he said it just didn't translate on the screen. I don't completely agree with that, but I still know what he's talking about. Yeah. So they didn't really want him. But so they do announce that they're going to do a film with Dalton at Cannes Film Festival in 1990. They even have like a made up poster. I don't know if there was a title on it, but they had a poster, showing Dalton will be back as Bond in like 92 or whatever. and they wrote a script. They had not hired a director yet. They were looking at, like, John Landis was one of the names I came across.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah. Ted Kotcheff, who, well, like, I was even thinking about Landis. Like, I guess he was coming to America. So I guess he was, like, he had a hit. But that still doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Ted Kotcheff I didn't write it down, but I think he did Rambo First Blood Part 2, I think. Oh, let me look that up, actually. Yeah, well, he did First Blood. Sorry, he did the first one. What the guy who did Tombstone, Cosmatos, he did the second one. But anyways, Ted Kotcheff, and then Roger Spottiswoode, who actually directs the next Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies. And then John Byram, who was not somebody I recognized anything that he did, but and then they had a screenplay written. It was gonna, or they at least had I can't remember if they had a full screenplay written, but the idea was that it was going to be a terrorist attack on a nuclear facility in Scotland, and it was going to be, they were threatening to have World War III. And then Bond would be going up against a former mentor named Denholm Crisp. Then after the Gulf War happened, because they were still working on it, they decided to change it from Scotland to Libya. The Chinese became the bad guy. Well, it was a Chinese general, it wasn't the entire Chinese nation. Right. And there was also a British industrialist and American mobsters were involved, which sounds like Goldfinger. And so that was what they were doing with them. But then it just never got going. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that no one could figure out it. No one could get completely on board with Dalton. Albert was fighting for him, but that was about it. And then his contract didn't lapse until 93. So a lot of people think they just kind of waited until his contract lapsed. And then I'm sure they got out of, like, they probably still had to pay him, but I guess they didn't want to have to pay him and then pay another actor at that same time. So so then, like, MGM starting to get pissed because they feel like they're just sitting there taking their time, which MGM's about to have a bunch of hits. Like Birdcage comes out the next year, which Birdcage actually had a higher budget than Goldeneye, which I thought was really funny. I mean, 15-20 million of that could have been Robin Williams. I don't know, but anyway, so they wait till his contract's lapse, and then after that happens, then they start kind of looking in. But MGM starts getting pissed. MGM threatens to. They say they're going to buy this set of novels, the Quiller novels, which I've heard of but I've never read. But it's just another spy series, and they said they were going to buy this, and they were going to start making Quiller movies instead of James Bond movies. And so I guess that got them going a little bit. But there was also some other stuff going on too. Like MGM ends up getting sold a few years after that. So a lot of that was going on. The creditors, the people that like gave them finance the pictures, they were being sold. So at one point they weren't even sure where they were going to get money from if they could to make the movie. So there was just a lot of weird stuff in the air. So that's partly why it took a minute. Once they got started, Phil Mayhew, I read an interview with him. He was director of photography. He said, I love this because I feel like this is every Bond film we hear this. They wanted to get back to more of a realistic approach. I feel like they say that every time.
They do a lot.
But he did bring up a good point where one of the things they thought exotic places, that being such a big part of the Bond franchise, they didn't really think that would be enough anymore, just because traveling is so much more accessible. Like so many more people are traveling the world. So many more people are going to these places. So that did have them concentrate a little more on the action, because they decided that we need to make this more just like a straight up action movie. Like, we need to come up with some really cool action sequences, as opposed to we're just going to have him sitting and there's going to be a sunset behind him on a beach or something. And I mean, we could talk about the action scenes when we talk about the movie, but I mean, you can definitely tell that it does feel more like that. This feels more like a straight up action movie than, some of the past ones have. And then, like I said, heading to 94, MGM made that thread about the Quiller series. Some people said that when True Lies came out, I read some interviews where people said True Lies kind of caused a problem for them, because then they thought that they couldn't do what they've normally done, because True Lies kind of was, I don't know if making fun of it, but True Lies was kind of just doing something with it. And and just the way the action movie was progressing. But then I also read I think it was Campbell that was like, yeah, we didn't give a shit about True Lies. That had fucking nothing to do with it. So I don't know, but some people said it did, some people said it didn't. So then Pierce, they go to Pierce to see if they could even get him. He was kind of irritated. He was not in a great mood. He didn't like the fact that after, because that was a big deal in the 80s. That might have been one of our first examples of entertainment news really cracking something. And he became known as the guy that almost played Bond. And that's kind of what he was known as. And that really pissed him off, obviously, because it's I'm trying to, act what are you talking about? Let's just, forget this. It's been 6 or 7 years. So when his agent told him they were interested, he said he would do it, but he said they had to give it to him now. He wasn't gonna wait around and go up against other people. But he's like, but if they don't want me, that's fine. But he's like, they have to tell me either or, but if they say they want me, I'll take it, so. Because he wanted to prove to people he could do it or whatever. And at that point, he was relegated to a lot of supporting roles. He was doing Mrs. Doubtfire. He was in Love Affair. He was kind of like that other, or is it Love Affair? Is that what the Warren Beatty movie? He was always kind of
that was the remake.
Yeah, he was like the other guy in these movies. I'll get into more of that when I get into casting about the other people, but I just wanted to mention that about Pierce Brosnan to kind of tell the evolution of this. Martin Campbell, they really liked him. He had done a TV. He had made 3 theatrical films: Criminal Law, Defenseless, and No Escape. All of those were not hits at all. They were pretty much flops. But they really liked what he did in No Escape because he had a really limited budget and he was able to.
No Escape's
great.
It's
a lot of fun. The late Ray Liotta, unfortunately, one of his.
Yeah.
But that had a really tiny budget. It was 15, 20 million or something. He was able to do a lot with it. So they thought, because they were going to get a lower budget, they thought he would be a good guy to bring in. Also, he had done this TV miniseries called Edge of Darkness, which is interesting because I think that was turned into, they made a feature film based on that with Mel Gibson, which is funny because Mel Gibson was possibly going to be Bond in this movie. That was one of the ones they were thinking about before they finally offered it to Pierce. I'll talk about that more in a second. But I just thought that was interesting. Campbell, he was amazing working around. One of the examples of the smaller budget I thought was funny was when the soldiers are running to the planes. They didn't have the money to have a bunch of extras, actually get these planes and have them on a landing. So he had to make the tails of the planes. So when they run out, you immediately see the tails, and then the next shot they're in the air.
Yeah.
So he would do stuff like that. That was kind of, so they talked about how much they loved him, and it might be why they brought it back for Casino Royale. I mean, I don't know because I haven't read that up to that yet, but we'll see. The first writer they brought in once they decided to go with this new movie was this guy Michael France. He had actually published a Bond fanzine when he was younger. It was called Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He was a big fan of the franchise, and he had just written Cliffhanger. That was apparently his spec. From what I read, that was actually a spec script. He sold it and it immediately went into production that. And that never happens. It's it was really quick. I mean, I don't think it was the next day, but it was just, he sold it in 92 or 90, or 90 or 91. And then the movie comes out in 93. So, I mean, it was a real quick turnaround. So that was really impressive. Although from what I can tell, most people didn't really like the script after he wrote, I mean, not Cliffhanger, but Goldeneye. But France said one of his biggest challenges was coming up with stunts and action sequences that had already been done. He actually came up with so many that they couldn't use them all because they didn't have the money. But a lot of his stuff that he came up with, they're used in some of the next few films, which I thought was interesting. And he also wanted to come up with something contemporary. So he did a lot of research on high-tech technology, and he found the electromagnetic pulse satellite thing, and that's kind of what. So that stayed in from his script.
I feel like this is, I don't know, you may know better than I do. This may be the first time I've heard of EMPs in movies, is in Goldeneye.
I couldn't think of enough. No, I thought about this, and I tried to Google it, and I couldn't really find anything. But I don't think I had heard of them either before this. Do they call them EMP in the movie? I'm trying to remember.
There's a moment where Bond says electromagnetic pulse, and I think they don't think they're saying it's exactly that, but they are saying it works like that. So,
I mean, I had that thought in my head because now I know what they are. But yeah, I don't. I bet in '95 I was just like, I don't. What the fuck is this? I don't
it
know.
just sounds like random movie
it sounds
technology.
Like bullshit. Yeah,
yeah.
It sounds like Star Trek. It sounds like all of a sudden I can't think of what they call that. Technobabble. That's what it sounds like.
Yep.
Then they bring in this guy Jeffrey Kane. Because Martin Campbell wasn't he liked like the basis of Francis' script, but he just didn't really like the script itself. So Jeffrey Kane comes in with Martin Campbell. He adds the entire first act, not first act, but you don't need the gun commander, and then he says that depends on your definition of safe sex, and like Firestein wrote that. Yeah. That was supposed to be a reference to like the AIDS crisis, AIDS epidemic, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is that a crisis or an epidemic, or does it matter? I don't know. I don't want to be.
I think it was an epidemic.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anybody. I didn't mean to offend anybody. If I did.
Well, I don't think you would have either way, but okay. I believe it was an epidemic.
Alan Cumming.
Yep.
Pretty sure first time I've seen Alan. Well, that's interesting too. So Alan Cumming and then Minnie Driver are both in this.
Yeah.
And earlier that year, they had basically like just made. I mean, they had made a couple films before Circle of Friends. Mm-hmm. But that was definitely like the first movie where both of them got noticed, especially Minnie Driver. Mm-hmm. It's funny that she's in this because she's in one scene, and you're just
I'm trying to figure out did we? I don't know if when I watched this, I knew who Minnie Driver was. Although Circle of Friends, I did see that, so maybe I did.
Yeah, I think I did, but I didn't like. I just like, oh, it's the person from Circle of Friends, but obviously like, Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Good Will Hunting becomes like her big one.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting's like 2 years later. So I was trying to remember. Did I know who she was? I know I saw Circle of Friends. The problem is in Circle of Friends, she's playing a character who's like overweight or something like that.
She's definitely like she's not like at a like she's not doing like a review show by
right.
Singing Stand By Your Man.
Part of the whole movie, part of the Circle of Friends' plot is that she's like, oh, she's so like barely overweight, she's unattractive, whatever. and then in Goldeneye, she's like slimmed down, so it's like I was trying to figure out like if I had back in the day when I watched this, and I can't even remember when I watched this. Like it was during a time that I would have been coming home from Tennessee Tech to come back to Franklin. And I would have either watched this on a Friday afternoon because we had no matinees. I just came into the theater and watched the movie. Or I found some other time to watch it. I don't know, but I don't remember anything about watching this the first time.
Yeah, I don't know if I knew. I mean, maybe I did. I mean, it's hard to know because watching it now, you're just like, holy crap, that's Minnie Driver. But, I don't know. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I ever saw Judi Dench in anything. Which fascinated me. I looked at her IMDb. There's movies she did. I mean, she's been acting technically like she was in a movie in the 60s.
Forever.
But she had some gaps in there. Maybe she was doing TV or something. But as far as her films, like there's movies I've seen that she did before this as I've gotten older, like A Room with a View, Enchanted April. But like this had to be the first movie I saw like when this came out. That had to be the first time I ever saw her, which is just insane to me now because it's fucking Judi Dench, man. But anyways. Jeffrey Kane comes in, and he's most known for adding that first act to a couple of the characters. Then they brought in this guy Kevin Wade. He had just hit it big with Working Girl. Was the script that he wrote that might have even got nominated for an Oscar. I know that movie got nominated for a bunch of stuff. I don't know if the screenplay did, but he basically just did a polish. But that is where the last name of Joe Don Baker's character's name came from. They were big. They liked Kevin Wade, so they gave his name, made his last name Wade.
Okay.
Yeah. The Joe Don Baker thing's interesting too because he was in Living Daylights, but I did see that he was in that Edge of Darkness miniseries. So my guess is that was a Martin Campbell thing, but I couldn't find anything that said that. I didn't read much of anything about Joe Don Baker. Then the final writer they brought in was Bruce Firestein. he had sold like spec scripts, but I think to this day, like he's never had a script that he wrote like official, like he actually had a credit on that actually got made. But he had sold some spec scripts at the time, and he was known as, and he was also a journalist, but he was known as being a really good dialogue writer. So he kind of brushes up a lot of the dialogue and stuff. So he's probably the reason a lot of the witty dialogue we have. Like I know he did the what is it, God, what does she say about, it's the Famke Janssen and Brosnan scene where she says something about, like I said, they added that bit of dialogue to kind of, make a comment about that. Just there's a lot of interesting dialogue in here. Like they kind of established the Cold War's over and all that kind of stuff. So they were trying to really like make sure, like it's almost kind of like now where it's not, I don't think this was like a fan base thing, but it almost feels like kind of now where this is just almost like almost every big movie does this, where they make sure they explain like fucking everything. That's why we have 2 hour and 40-minute movies now constantly. But it almost feels like this was one where they were well aware of that. They were really trying really hard to make him work in the 90s. To the point where I almost think they were a little scared and they were a little taken back. And they were just, they just didn't really know exactly what to do. It's kind of amazing this movie was made, and was as I don't want to get too much into it, but it was as good as it is. Let's put it that way. The film was shot on location in the UK, Russia, Monte Carlo, and Puerto Rico. It was the first film to be shot at the Leavesden Studios or Leviston Studios. I'm not really sure, but that's a big UK studio. That's
Leviston's probably right.
And it was the first Bond film to use CGI, which is very noticeable.
Well, and it's pretty obvious too. Like that's the thing. You watch this today, it's like, whoa, there's the CGI.
And I could be wrong because we're not going to watch it for a few weeks, but Die Another Day is the Brosnan film I had seen the most recently because we send it. And the effects in that movie are so bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, and I don't know, like, I'm wondering, like, these have to, but it's just weird if these are better than that because you would think 7 years later. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of that depends on budget, and I mean, a lot of that depends on so many things. So I don't think they use like a ton of CGI, but when they use it, you can definitely tell.
Yeah.
The special effects were done by Derek Meddings. I think we've talked about him a little bit. We haven't talked about him a ton, but he's been with the franchise since like the 70s. He creates a lot of the miniatures and stuff like that. But this was his last one. This was his last movie, I think, but he died in 90. He died before the movie was released. I think he died in like 95, but it was before the movie was released. But he's done it. He did a lot of the Bond films in the 70s, but he also worked on Superman, 1978 Superman, 89 Batman, and he also played Dr. Stinson in Spies Like Us. Maybe that's the John Landis connection. I don't fucking know.
Yep.
They're like, hey, Derek. Derek's like, hey, man, my friend John would really like to direct a Bond film. I kind of want to see a John Landis Bond film now, though, that we've talked about
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Maybe Spies Like Us was like, that's what we would get. Fuck if I know. We'd have like Bond like farting on people as they're taking a test.
Probably.
Spies Like Us. I'm sure so many people that listen to this have seen Spies Like Us. So I'll get into a little bit of this. What I found on the stunts for the car chase at the beginning, which is it's Famke John. Is it Famke? It's Famke, right?
It's Famke. Yeah. Now here's the thing. I think it's Famke Janssen, Famke Janssen.
I feel like that's what I've heard.
Our friends from the Netherlands assure us that it has to be Famke Janssen because they do that.
It could be.
But the problem is, I think we Americanize things, and I think Americanizing things is fine, especially for somebody like who's acting and they have their certain name that they go by that people recognize them by. And there was a video I saw a while back. She was on Conan or something like that, or Jimmy Kimmel. I don't know who it was, but they were like, "Will you tell me how your name is pronounced? Is it Famke Janssen?" And she just nods. Now, she could also have just been being nice. There's always the possibility that she didn't want to like correct him on, and she doesn't want to go through the whole thing of people going Famke Janssen all the time or whatever. So who knows? But yeah, Famke at least is right. So
I wouldn't be surprised at all if she just decided to go by Janssen. I wouldn't be surprised like if her agent was like, "You need to go by Janssen because nobody's going to pronounce this right."
Well, and the only reason I even know the Famke is I believe her name was announced in Deep Rising's trailer. So that's the only thing that I remember.
Well, my mom's family, for instance, my mom's maiden name, they're Vi, but it's they're Italian, but it's VIA. So everybody says Via.
Oh, yeah.
So my uncles, both of my mom's brothers, they moved closer to like the West Coast. One's in Colorado, one's in California, and they started going by Via, which royally pissed my grandparents off. That was a fun time period in our family's lives.
I'm sure.
But I probably would too. If that's all they would call me, I'd probably that's fine.
Yeah, that's the name. It's like forever I've been saying Steve Buscemi, but apparently you don't put that sh part in there. It's Buscemi.
Oh, interesting.
It's Steve Buscemi, but I don't think he corrects people on it or anything. So
I guess not. So we're gonna go with Famke Janssen.
Yep.
The scene at the beginning though with her and Brosnan and Bond, they're kind of doing like a little car chase. I mean, it's not really a car chase. I mean, he's not like after her at that point. Just that scene's really weird, by the way. I don't know how he just happens to come up on her, but they had to. She was driving a Ferrari. He's in an Aston Martin DB5. They had to attach nails to the Ferrari's tires so it would skid. And at least in one of the takes, the cars did collide.
Oh, really?
The tank chase was the biggest thing. That was the hardest thing for them to film. It wasn't the hardest thing for them to film. It took the longest. It took 6 weeks to film. They modified it with a fake explosive, like reactive armor, because it was like a tank they had borrowed. Like they didn't own it or anything. They just borrowed it. And I mean, they might have had to pay for it, but I mean, it wasn't theirs. And then they had to change the tracks too. They had to make them rubber because if they hadn't, they would have destroyed all the streets in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
That is a memorable sequence.
Oh yeah.
I love where the statues on top of it. Like it's just crazy. And then that tank is on display at Old Buckingham Airfield. It's in the East England Military Museum. If you ever happen to be there, you can go look at that tank. So the antenna cradle fight was inspired by Bond and Red Grant from Russia with Love. Brosnan and I almost said Buscemi. Brosnan and Sean Bean. Sean Bean. We haven't talked about him yet, but he plays like the main villain. They did almost all the stunts. The only thing they didn't do was there's a part in that where they get thrown up against a wall. And they use stuntmen from that. Brosnan did like damage his hand. Did he break it? Did I write that? He just injured his hand really bad to where he was out of commission for a few days or something. But it wasn't in the fight. It was when that ladder extended. He did something and he messed up his hand on that.
I imagine so. It looks. I mean, even as a stunt, that looks like looked painful.
Well, and they're like falling down steps and all kinds of stuff. And like
I mean, not to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stunts are going to be painful a lot. I don't mean to say that. I just mean like as something that you put your primary actor in, and usually you think all the safeguards are involved. It looked painful even for that.
Well, then it's always like something silly that actually gets you injured. Like it's like baseball injuries. Like I just say that because those seem to always be the dumbest things. Like people like running over their foot with a lawnmower and crap like that. Like that's it's never like
if we believe they're telling the truth about
that's
it.
True. That's true. Or you get beat up by Tawny Catania and you can't pitch opening night.
Yeah, there's that. There's also that. Yes.
R.I.P. Tawny Catania, by the way. So the bungee jump at the beginning of the film was voted the best movie stunt of all time in I don't know who Sky Movies is, but they did a 2002 poll. It set a record. It was in the Guinness. I don't know if it still is. I assume so, but it's. I guess it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. The highest bungee jump off a fixed structure, which I believe it. That looks terrifying.
It's incredible. It's a 700-foot drop. Apparently, 722 feet. This guy jumps off.
Wayne Michaels.
And his name. And the other thing that he's talking about in this, in the limited behind the scenes of this disc, is that, he had. First off, they had to do a lot of stuff with the shocks on the bungee cord because no matter what, there was going to be a lot of force pressed onto the cord, and I think it would snap if they didn't do anything. They didn't do the safeguards that they did, and of course, the other part of it is that the wind starts becoming a big factor too. And so apparently, like, he's jumping off of this thing, and the wind is just like trying to swirl him around, and he's got to keep it straight all the way down. And then he has to have the presence of mind to pull that gun out so that it looks like he's shooting that whatever the Bond is shooting out or whatever. This is like, it's a really, really impressive stunt for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah, this is like some of the better stunt work I think we've seen in a Bond movie. I mean, there's great stunt work in all of them, but I just... We were talking so much about, like, I feel like we talked less about the stunt work like in the 80s movies, because they're just, they were more, I guess those movies were a little more like gunfights and drama and all that kind of stuff. This one, they kind of brought back like the really big stuff. The biggest, though, like the craziest thing,
it's insane,
is the... by the way, I hated this scene in 1995 so much.
Oh, yeah?
Now I like it better, but especially after reading about what they did. But so there's a scene in the opening. If you for some reason haven't seen it and you're listening to this, Bond rides a motorcycle, and there's a plane. I don't know how to explain this. There's a plane in front of him, moving with no pilot. He's riding a motorcycle past it. Is it the dam or whatever? Is that what it's falling? Or I guess it's like a mountain or
no? It's just off of a mountain cliff or whatever.
So the plane goes off the mountain and starts like going down. And then Bond jumps off the motorcycle, and then the motorcycle jumps, and then he jumps off the motorcycle, skydives, catches up with the plane, gets in there, and ends up living. It's crazy. B.J. Worth was a stuntman who dived. Because they had somebody different riding the motorcycle. The guy riding the motorcycle had a parachute. And so when he jumped off, which it's crazy. Did they talk about that? Like how many motorcycles they crashed? Because they used several motorcycles. I didn't get a number, but nobody could say the number, but it was several. But what's funny is they had to because I don't know what that area was. I guess that was in Russia. I can't remember where they were, but whatever that area was, they had to go after they were done, after the few days of shooting, they had to go down there and pick up all the motorcycle parts. And they said it was insane. Oh, wow. It was just absolutely insane. Because the motorcycle obviously would just drop. But then after that, then BJ Worth does the skydiving part, and then they used miniatures, and they did a cast of Brosnan, and they filmed him in front of I don't know if it's green screen, but it was something. Like they filmed him in front of something. They were for a second. Campbell says for a second they really were trying to figure out if BJ Worth could catch up with the plane and get in there. Like they were really they were trying, which sounds like a Bond movie, right? I think in the 60s, that's what they would have done. Somebody probably would have died. But they eventually decided not to do that. But they also put I don't know how much you heard about it. They put a parachute on the plane. I read somewhere, or some kind of device to slow it down too. And then, like I said, and then obviously there's
they didn't get into the nuts and bolts of it. They brought you to the scene as they were getting shot, and they kind of described what was happening, but nothing into the detail of the making ofs that I had been seeing all the way up until this point. So
it's still pretty silly.
So no, I didn't hear any of that. Yeah, it is. It's very silly. Look,
but I like it better now.
Yeah, I like it better too. It's a perfect capper to that opening scene. But you're sitting there going, if you just simply wrote it where he didn't do that and he mowed all the guys down or he hid or something, you would have been fine with that too. As far as because willingly jumping off of that mountain to chase down a plane that's crashing, that's probably more dangerous than just facing all those dudes. So I'm like, I don't
getting
know.
kidnapped and put in prison until somebody could come get them out. I mean,
but then of course you ask me, what do I want more? Do I want him to jump off the mountain and chase down a plane, or do I want him to mow down a bunch of dudes on the top of the mountain? I'm gonna pick the stunt every time.
They went for it. They absolutely went for it, and I got to give them credit for that. I appreciate that more as a 46-year-old than I did as a 20. How old was I? 19. I was 19. I couldn't remember.
By the way, we're talking about this thing. This is one of my favorite things that I've noticed during doing the Sins video for this movie. You start off with this giant jump off of a dam, and he goes down into this what is an underground facility or whatever. By the time it's over, he's somehow on top of a mountain. Where did that come from?
I didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about that.
He jumps. Yeah, you're like how did that? Now, I remember writing this Sins video because I was like, this could end up being argumentative because we don't know the terrain. We don't know if he jumped down to this one thing and went into this underground facility and then somehow. I don't know. They go up a mountain, and I don't know. It was one of those weird things that was fun to point out.
That'd be great. Like
it's one of those things
if
that
you don't
point
write
out.
any,
Yeah.
I would just like if you don't write any sense about him jumping in the plane, but just complain about the fact that he was on a mountain. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that sends in there. If you want to review it, it's a fun little one. There's another one too where he and Sean Bean decide to they're going down further into the facility, and then the next scene that you see them is they're pushing a grate up from somewhere. I'm like, you just were going down. Why are you going up now? Anyway.
Oh my God. That's funny. There's this scene in Raising. I don't know. Have you seen Raising Cain recently? Have you seen Raising Cain?
No, but I loved Raising Cain.
It's great.
I loved it when I saw it.
It's definitely like, I don't believe that it's a straight up, I don't really buy that it's like overall a dark comedy, but there's definitely humor in it. And one of my favorite scenes is where the doctor, she's walking with the two like cops or whatever, and she's telling them about his mental issues. But like they're walking through this building, they go upstairs and then they go downstairs and then they go upstairs again. It's like this 6-minute sequence, and it's so fun. I didn't catch it forever, and then I actually looked up something.
I bet if you Oh, you looked something up on it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just read that other people noticed it.
Other people know. I thought you were about to say De Palma meant to do that or something
I think he had to have though, right? I don't know. Could he be making fun of scenes? But it's still, I don't know. I love that movie, by the way. It's awesome. But that's just what that made me think of when you were talking about that. And that probably does happen more than we even notice. I'll just a couple more things in the production. There was before we get into the cast and stuff, there was a BMW in this film. It was part of they had a lot of product placement in this one, by the way. It's part of the refilm deal they made with BMW. This was the BMW Z3. There was a limited edition 007 model that sold out in the first day they made it available to order. So I can't imagine how much that was. And then the other thing I'll mention, Maurice Binder, he is no longer involved. He passed away. So Daniel Kleinman took over the opening credits. I think he does a really good job.
And it's awesome. The opening credits of this take the sort of the old way of old classic Bond titles, and then turn it into something else, like more artistic even. There's a lot of just wild stuff going on in these opening credits that they kind of messed with earlier, but not to this point. You have the woman with the face turns around. There's another face. She opens her mouth. A gun comes out of it.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Really cool.
He was trying to show also there it's the fall of the communism in Russia. You see Stalin and stuff like that. It's one of my favorite opening title sequences, and they kind of play around with those. I feel like in all the Brosnan ones, I don't remember exactly what they do in the next two, but Die Another Day they do something completely different. I don't think it works, but they at least were trying to mess with the formula a little bit with all that. Let's get into the cast. We already kind of talked about Pierce Brosnan. He was offered the role in the 80s. He had taken it, but then he had a contract with Remington Steele, the TV show that he was really well known for at the time. And we talked about that on the Living Daylights podcast. If you want to go back and listen to that, I won't get into the details, but there was some fuckery, and he didn't get to do Living Daylights. But now he's available. I already mentioned Mrs. Doubtfire and Love Affair. That's kind of what he had been doing, was supporting roles. He had a few starring roles, but they're like TV movies or direct to video movies, stuff like that. Although he did this TV movie called Murder 101, which I really like. I wish they would do a Blu-ray release of that or something. But anyways, Sean Bean plays the main bad guy, Alec Trevelyan.
This has to be the first time I've ever seen Sean Bean before.
Yeah, I looked it up. So you had seen, but Patriot Games, I think, was the first time I saw him.
Patriot Games would be the
but
first time.
I didn't really think about him. Like I don't remember watching Goldeneye and being like, hey, that's the guy from Patriot Games.
Right.
Right. So pretty much the first time. He had not done much before this. He's also, after this, though, of course, Lord of the Rings, Ronin, and of course, National Treasure, I think, is probably a pretty memorable role for him, even though that movie's silly. And obviously, also Flight Plan, obviously. How can you not mention Flight Plan?
Yeah, and Game of Thrones, and then...
of course, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and The Martian and stuff like that. He's,
The Martian.
of course,
ton of stuff.
well established at this point.
Yes, but Flight Plan is easily his best film.
Flight Plan, yes, absolutely, yes.
I'm trying to, I always think about that, what great trailer disappointed me the most when I saw the movie. I'm pretty sure it's Flight Plan.
No, yeah, for sure.
That trailer looked awesome. It just looked like it looked like a really cool thriller.
I mean, that's one of those movies that tells you that the premise is so great, but there's no way you can possibly pay this off.
That is true.
So I mean, you no matter what explanation you come up with, oh, she's crazy is not a good explanation. Like the thing that they came up with obviously isn't a good explanation. Or like a good enough one for that premise. Anyway.
Yeah, I know, but you're like Jodie Foster's in this though. It's got to be good, right? We're still at that time where if Jodie Foster's in it, it has to be good, but it was not. I don't know why we were like that. I mean, Nim's Island had come out, I think, at that point.
No, yeah.
But Isabella Scorupco, I'm going to go with
Scorupco, I think, but I don't know.
Oh, that makes sense. So definitely the first time I'd seen her. She has not really had like a huge career. It was weird though. Like she didn't do much after this until like 2000, but then like in the early 2000s, she was in Vertical Limit. She was in Reign of Fire and Exorcist the Beginning, which are all like big studio movies. None of them were.
Yeah, Vertical Limit.
Reign of Fire, I don't think was a bomb.
Movie. Martin Campbell. Martin Campbell did Vertical Limit, so like that sort of.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. He did Vertical Limit.
Yeah.
And then I guess Exorcist the Beginning, so I don't know, because I've never seen the Paul Schrader version of that, so I don't know if she was in that or if that was somebody Rennie Harlan brought in. I don't know, but she hasn't done much. She's still acting, but she's mostly done like television and stuff.
You mean our friend and pal,
our friend Rennie Harlan, friend of the podcast,
right.
Well, friend of an older podcast, Rennie Harlan.
Yep.
But yeah, she plays Natalia Simonova. I don't know. I like her. I'm kind of surprised I don't know. I kind of wish she had a bigger career because she's good in this. She's got a nice screen presence. Famke Janssen. So Lord of Illusions came out this year, same year.
Yep.
I don't remember what came first. I didn't look it up.
I believe Lord of Illusions did.
I think so too. Because Goldeneye was like November. Yeah, it had to have. It had to have then.
I mean, it's possible that it was one of those December horror dumps.
Yeah, I think it was like, I'm going to say it was like early fall or end of summer. But anyways, or maybe it could have been even like late spring. I mean, who knows?
It came out in August.
Okay, so yeah, it came out a few months before. I knew her though because she was in a Star Trek Next Generation episode. I think it's called The Perfect Mate. I think is what it's called. But
okay.
Yeah, and she played the perfect mate.
Of course she did. What else was she going to be?
She's been in a bunch of stuff. I still wish she had. I wish she had. I don't know. I just wish she had like headlined some stuff. I just feel like she's got a lot of talent that was never really used well by
No.
But she's in the first few X-Men movies, the Bryan Singer and the fucking with Brett Ratner. Those three. I can't. Is she in Days of Future? I think she is. Well, she pops up in at least one or two of the Wolverine movies. So she plays Jean Grey in the X-Men movies.
Yeah.
She's also Deep Rising, The Faculty, House of Haunted Hill, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
She plays one of my favorite character names, Xenia Onatopp.
Yep. By the way, she is in.
Is it Xenia? No, it's
she is in Days of Future Past. By the way.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's Xenia Onatopp.
Xenia, that's right, Xenia Onatopp. I love that name. That is a very clever name.
Yep.
Jodan Baker, aka Mitchell. He plays Jack Wade.
Joe
Don Baker was in Living Daylights. We talked about him just a couple weeks ago. He was one of the bad guys in Living Daylights. So it's kind of weird seeing him.
General Whitaker or something like whatever.
He was the guy selling guns. Now he's like a big CIA guy. He pops up.
He's like American comic relief. He's like, he's like Felix Leiter, but not Felix Leiter anymore.
Yeah, they chose not to have Felix Leiter in, and they used him instead. I couldn't find anything on why they did that. But that's what they did. He's fine though. He's only in a couple scenes anyways. But he shows up. If you didn't listen to Living Daylights episode, he's been in a bunch of stuff. I knew him mostly like when I was younger. I knew him from Fletch. And then he in the 91 version of Cape Fear. Those are kind of the. And then eventually, MST3K. Mitchell.
The Natural for me. That was the Joe Don Baker that I grew up with. Was the Natural. Played the Whammer.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was in the Natural. He's the one that he strikes out at the beginning, right?
Plays the Whammer.
Yeah. He also was in, we mentioned this earlier, but just in case I cut that for some reason, he was also in the Edge of Darkness miniseries that Martin Campbell directed. So that probably factored into.
I would say so.
Yeah. Robbie Coltrane, who I love.
Who's fantastic.
I know.
Fantastic.
Wish he was in more. I think he comes back too, right? I know Joe Don Baker comes back. I feel like he comes back too.
I think that's right.
But,
I think that's right.
He's Valentin Zukovsky. And I love that line too, where Brosnan's talking to Joe Don Baker, or Bond's talking to Jack Wade, and Jack Wade mentions somebody, and then Bond's like, "You mean Valentin Zukovsky?" He's like, "Yeah, you heard of him?" He's like, "I gave him the limp."
Yeah. He comes back in he comes back in The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, okay, cool. Robbie Coltrane, I knew him mostly at that European Vacation and Nuns on the Run. Those were the two movies I knew him in.
Yep.
But probably most people know him from Harry Potter, I would assume.
These days.
Yes, these days. Tasheki Cairo, I'm going to go with.
I don't know. Don't know this one.
He plays Dmitry Mishkin. This is kind of an interesting, how they kind of do. They're trying to show kind of how at the end of the Cold War, where you've got this Mishkin guy who's really trying to keep peace, and he's really trying to, do the right thing, and then you've got the General Oryumov or whatever is like the evil guy that's trying to, undermine everything. But I thought I knew him from some stuff, but I looked up his credits, and maybe I just seen him and something I forgot. But he's in Bad Boys, but maybe that's where I remember him from. He's also in Wing Commander, which I didn't see.
Wing Commander. Wow.
He was in 1492.
That movie that famously tried to put a Star Wars that wasn't it.
I have not seen it.
Was it? See, there was a movie that came out that famously put a Star Wars trailer attached on it. That
I don't know.
So it was that Wing Commander that had Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard and whatever. And they came out with a trailer on that particular movie. Now you're talking about a Wing Commander, probably a voice in the game or something, maybe. I don't know, but is that what you're talking about?
No,
this guy?
the movie Wing Commander.
Fresh off of Wing Commander?
No, I'm saying he was in Wing Commander. He was just.
Oh, I thought you said he had just done it
he
or
was
something,
just in it.
and that he came to. Yeah, okay, but yeah, the Wing Commander movie put a Star Wars trailer on it so that people would go watch.
Oh, I have heard this story.
Commander.
Yes.
And so the what ended up happening, I don't think it was nearly as big as they were hoping, but there were people who were buying tickets to Wing Commander and seeing the trailer and then leaving.
I believe it. I mean, I've heard it's like horror. It's one of the worst movies ever. So I've just never taken it unless we send it or something one of these days. I probably won't watch it.
Yeah.
So then you have, going now to General Oryumov, you have Godfrey John. He's a German actor. I haven't watched a lot. I don't know if I've watched any of the Werner Fassbinder films, but he's a very famous filmmaker.
I've seen seen one.
Yeah.
I've seen one. Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. I don't know if he was in that
Yeah,
one. But,
he
that
might
was
have
the
been.
one
He
I've
was in
seen.
like 7 or something of the movies, but he collaborated with him. So that was what he was most known for. He's mostly done like German films and stuff. He has not done a lot of American stuff. He's got the face of a bad guy though. Like I don't mean that mean.
Yes, he does.
But
I know what you mean.
Alan Cumming was in Circle of Friends right before this, and then after this, he did Romeo and Michelle, Spice World. He's in one of the X-Men movies, first couple of Spy Kid films, but he plays Boris Grushenko, one of the...
And, of course, obviously in X2, that's where a
yep.
lot of people knew him as Nightcrawler. And then in that defunct Zero Effect series that we never got to see.
That's right. I forgot about that. Can you watch that pilot? Is it like available to watch? Have you ever seen it?
I bet you can these days. You bet if you look around, you can
it
find
probably wasn't good. Most of the time, if something's actually good, it does at least get like on TV for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know, but who knows?
Right.
Michael Kitchen plays Tanner, which I thought was interesting. Tanner becomes a bit of, I don't know if he's like used more, but Tanner sticks around for the Craig films too. It's not Michael Kitchen in the Craig films; it's Rory Kinnear. But it's a character from the books. But he was only in a couple of Bond films before this. He was in the character was in The Man with the Golden Gun and For Your Eyes Only. It was played by completely different people. But yeah, so he plays him in this one. He wasn't in much around that time, but he was in the Russia House. Stuff like I thought that was kind of funny. Desmond Llewellyn is actually back. He is the well, unless you count Jodan Baker, I guess. But Desmond Llewellyn is like the only person back playing a character that he's played before, because they recast Elm and they recast Moneypenny and they recasted Bond.
Yep.
So yeah, Desmond Llewellyn's back. This will be his last. He dies after. I mean, real life. The actor died after World Is Not Enough, so we've only got him for a couple more weeks, which is really sad.
Yeah,
because I like Desmond Llewellyn.
Yeah,
and he's quite good in this. In the couple scenes he's in, he's quite good in this.
Oh yeah, they give him a very Naked Gun-esque scene.
Oh, it's crazy
in this movie.
That's my lunch. We talked about this a little bit. I don't know if this actually will make it into the podcast, but we did mention this last week that Samantha Bond is the actress that plays Moneypenny, and it's like, you have to wonder, she's good. She's not a bad actor or anything, but I do wonder if it got down to like her and a few more people, if they were just like, let's go with the one with the last name of Bond.
Right.
Which good for her, because I feel like a lot of people out there would have not cast her because of that. Because they would have been, people are going to think we're, just casting her because of her last name. Judi Dench, we mentioned her a little bit earlier. We both said this probably was the first time we ever saw her in anything. She had done a few things. She had done stuff before this, obviously, but just nothing that we would have watched at that age. I wasn't watching like Henry V and A Room with a View when I was like 10 or whatever. But after this, obviously she wins an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. I still think that's the shortest amount of screen time, right? It's up there if it's not.
Yeah,
or at least
I think
for
that
maybe
might be right.
that category or whatever. Because she's in like 8 minutes or 10 minutes. It's not long. Judi Dench, my favorite Judi Dench though, I think is Notes on a Scandal, because she's really like dark in that. Like it's I don't know. I really like Notes on a Scandal. That movie isn't talked about enough. Yeah. She plays M, and so we have a female M, which and they do mention her predecessor. So they do make it seem like she's just a new hire, or not new, but like she's taking over the M, whatever that is.
Yeah, and this is another, I think, way that they try to get Bond into the 90s, is they have him with a female boss who is telling him that she's on to his bullshit, and but I love, and we'll get into the review later, but I love the scene that she has with him saying, I don't have any compunction about sending you out to your death, but I do want you to come back alive. So it's such a great scene and a great understanding between the two, that I may not like you, but I want you to come back alive.
And I think it goes back a little bit to the relationship that Connery's Bond had with M, because that at times almost felt like a father-son.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I don't want that to sound degrading that I'm saying she's like a mother, but it does feel more like I don't know, she's got two sides, right? I mean, she's not afraid to do the job that she has to do, but obviously she does want him to come back. She doesn't want to lose anybody.
Yeah.
But she also, if she has to send him to his death, she has no problem doing that. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's a very cool scene. It's a scene I like more every time I see it. She sticks around too. Obviously, she is in the first 3 Craig films, which I remember at the time when I watched Casino Royale. I thought it was really weird they kept her on because it was like, well, if this isn't supposed to be like the last ones, and this is like Bond when he's starting off.
Yeah.
How is she M? Like
it was really weird.
It's fine. It's fine. And they were obviously just rebooting from fresh, which is fine. But when you had her in the Brosnan films, then you put her in that as the same character. It just, I don't know. It's a little weird. But I'm glad.
They do a lot of that stuff, right? Where they kind of go through not only the reboot stuff, but then they keep things from the others. Like at the very end of No Time to Die, they're in that hallway and you see Bernard Lee and you see Judi Dench, you see their pictures or their paintings or whatever. So like
that's right.
So they keep the continuity of all the M's. I don't know. Anyway,
I totally forgot about that. That's amazing. And then I'll just mention real quick, Serena Gordon, she plays the woman at the beginning. I mean, she doesn't have much to do in the movie, but I felt bad like not mentioning her since I mentioned all the other actors with speaking parts. She's like somebody that's supposed to be evaluating Bond, and they end up having sex.
Right.
Even after he tells her that Famke Janssen is the next woman.
Right.
Like,
right. Well, and not only do
some
they
things
have
never change.
Not only do they have sex after that, they have sex on while the car is parked on this weird winding street. That also happens. So
I mean, and sex in an Aston Martin that would not be comfortable.
Can't be good.
There's no way.
Can't be good.
There's no way.
Maybe Bond has had that much sex that it being in an Aston Martin not a big deal.
Maybe not. And then I will mention again, we already mentioned her. Minnie Driver has a pretty memorable scene in this. I mean, it's silly, but she's Minnie Driver. She handles it very well.
Yeah, she's Valentine Zukovsky's mistress or whatever.
Yes,
who's
singing.
That's right.
That's my mistress.
Singing on the stage very badly.
Irina is her name. But we mentioned she was in Circle of Friends with Alan Cumming. That was also Matt Damon. He was in Circle of Friends too.
He?
So that was. Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
Check that now that you say that, let me just make sure I'm right on that. I think it is, because I think that was one of the first times I saw him too. I mean, he was in School Ties. I think him and Affleck both are in School Ties. Oh no, you're right. It's not Damon. It's Chris. Chris O'Donnell. It's Chris O'Donnell. Which whatever. At that time period, they're the same person as far as I'm concerned.
Very much so.
They became two very different actors, but at that time, I mean, I'm not like, if you were like Matt Damon played Robin in Batman and Robin, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah. And Matt Damon was famously in The Bachelor as well, so that was also another movie that he was in.
And Chris O'Donnell was great in Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, he was.
Sorry. So the music, so the Goldeneye theme song, which I sent Chris like a message yesterday when I was watching this, like, holy shit, I forgot that Bono and the Edge wrote this song. So they write the Goldeneye theme song called Goldeneye. It is performed by the awesome Tina Turner. Ace of Base had written a song.
Really?
That they were trying. Yeah, they I guess they contracted them too. I don't know, but they wrote a song. It didn't get picked up, obviously, but if you want to hear a version of that, it's called The Juvenile. It's I don't know what album it's on. I don't know anything about Ace of Base, but if you're an Ace of Base fan or you're curious, it's called The Juvenile. That's somewhat what would have been the Bond song. But I feel what I read, it sounds like they changed it up quite a bit. Eric Serra composed the score. That is probably the most criticism of this movie. I was like, this score is fucking awful. What is going on with this, man? that like techno thing or whatever.
Yeah,
in the car chase.
And it happens throughout, like in really big scenes. And I was like, okay, there's a reason why this dude did not continue on. I don't know I don't think he went on to the other Bonds after this.
I don't believe he did either. And the closing credits song he wrote too, which is horrible.
Yeah, yes, it's so bad. I know I don't mean to speak ill of people. Like I'm just saying it just stood out in this movie how bad it was.
Like, he fucked up the Bond theme.
Yeah.
He fucked it up. Like, how do you fuck up the Bond? Just play the Bond theme. Like, how just play, is it John Barry? I'm already forgetting.
John Barry's, yeah.
Just play his theme. Like, why? Why are we changing things?
I can see, too, like, Hans Zimmer did that thing with the Mission Impossible theme. All this is a year later, but... where he
that was okay though,
where he infused some more modern sensibilities to it. But this, this is what it felt like to me. You know, like some really cheap 90s movie that, you know, went straight to video or something. That's what that soundtrack feels like to me. It only picks up, like, there's a couple of moments at the end where I'm like, oh, okay, there's some real, like, instrumentation and stuff that makes sense. But there's so much, like, weird, like, subdued keyboard music in this. I don't know what the fuck it is. But I was like, I hope I'm not crazy because this really sounds shitty to me.
No, it was voted in a couple of different polls as the worst score ever in the Bond franchise. One critic said it would have fit better on an elevator ride than a Bond film.
Yeah. No, I mean, seriously, this gives me so much, like, I don't know. I'm so glad that this has happened because I was really wondering, was I crazy or is this horrible? Like, it makes no sense.
And Campbell mentioned it. He didn't really talk directly. Like, he didn't say he didn't like it, but he did kind of make a comment along the lines of, we really didn't have time to do anything about it. Like,
I mean, we're like we said, we're sitting there talking about a movie that they're doing the big stunts in March of 95 for a movie that's coming out in November. You know, of course they didn't have time.
They're all just like, God damn it, Eric Serra.
Yeah.
But we have to use it. Mm-hmm. Poor guy. I'm sure he's a lovely man.
Yeah. And he may have great scores. He may have great scores other places, or scores that are good for the movie that they're in. But my God, man, I really was like, man, this score stands out as very bad. Usually, I would have heard this and I would just kind of notice.
Yeah.
This time, I really just noticed on my own without any kind of like beforehand research or anything.
Reviews at the time, they were mostly positive. People really liked Brosnan. People really liked Judi Dench, and they loved that, you know, they made him a woman. And I mean, which it's interesting. If we'd had Twitter then, though, oh my God, I can't even imagine.
I know.
But there were negative reviews. Negative reviews mostly were like stuff like people just didn't feel like Bond could work in the night. It kind of felt like they just came into this going, this isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't.
Yeah.
And then some people did complain about the score. Mm-hmm. That happened. All right. So I don't have anything else. That was a long production thing, but we just had a lot to talk about with it being a 6-year gap and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So are you ready to do the review?
Yeah.
I've got you in my sights.
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
There's no need to shout. I'm not shouting.
Why don't you stop your whining and get on with it? I've heard this shit before.
We are going to give you our thoughts on whatever film we are discussing this week. This week we are discussing Goldeneye. I will say, I know you said you don't remember when you saw it, but I remember because we were friends at this point. This is definitely the first Bond film that comes out when we know each other. So I do feel like we probably talked about this. I think I have memories of us. Like, this would have been like the first Bond film we would have discussed. Not that I have specific memories. I'm just saying in general. Like, it's interesting to talk about this one because this is like, and this is right. We're both in college. And I mean, this is kind of, when we're adults, this is our first Bond film as adults, I guess. And, I don't know. What did you think of it then, and what do you think of it now? I guess
if I remember correctly, I didn't like this at all when it came out. It felt, I don't know. I don't know what I was feeling at 18 about a movie like this. Well, I'll tell you this: Famke Janssen was somebody who stood out. I know that I liked her a lot. This is the first since whoever played in Never Say Never Again. Who was that? Was it Barbara? Yeah, Barbara. Is this since Barbara Carrera that I have, and that's not even a canon Bond film, that I felt like somebody who was really adding a lot to their role that maybe wasn't even written in. It could have been, I don't know, but seeing someone who gets sexual charge out of like the killing and all the different violence in the movie, it's fucked up, but it's also a great characterization that she's added to this and everything. So she immediately memorable, and then not just the name, just all the physicality and the way she's playing that part. So I know I liked that a lot. But yeah, I at 18, I don't remember like really liking this. I don't think I was a big Bond fan at the time either. I had seen a couple of Timothy Daltons, and I still don't remember how many Connery or Moores I had seen at this point. Maybe none. So I know I didn't like it too much. But over time, I feel like I've seen this Bond more than any of them.
Oh, nice.
Because I don't know, though, I send this movie too, but there were like moments where I was like, oh, I know exactly what the line is going to be, like, exactly how they're going to say it and all that. So I know I've seen this quite a bit. I've given it a lot of chances, and overall, I really, really like this movie now. It's one of the best Bonds, I think. The opening sequence is one of the best, if not the best, I've seen on film. Like, they have the opening dam sequence, the inside the facility where he does all that stuff, where he gets behind the barrels, and then he turns on the conveyor belt and then just starts shooting, and he shoots down that case full of barrels coming out and everything. So I love how he's using his head during all of this, and then later on, of course, it's ridiculous, but it's a great moment in Bond history that he chases down that plane and grabs it and then flies it out of there, and then it goes right into that great opening sequence, the opening credit sequence, where Tina Turner it feels like Shirley Bassey is back. The way the titles are fucking amazing. I love everything about that.
And that bass line, that bump, bump, bump. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it gives you chills. And then the story seems stripped down finally for once. There's some complex things about it, but I never once sat there and went, how are they doing this? Or how does this person relate to that person? Or, there wasn't ever any of that, which has been going on in a lot of the Bond movies in the last few that we've gone over, where I'm like, what is going on in this
movie? Has a better pace.
Nothing like that.
There's a much better pace to this movie than there had been.
And so all of the Sean Bean stuff, where like all of his motivations and where those motivations come from, are not only satisfying to a Bond film, but they're considering they're talking about this being the first, like, a post Cold War Bond movie. To make his grievance go all the way back to 1945, and I guess the British ejection of these, and is it Lisa Cossack? There's some kind of they're some kind of Cossack. I can't remember what it is.
He's like their son, right?
It's like a and he's sort of like getting his revenge back on the British because of something that happened with his parents back in 1945. Really fits into that whole post Cold War thing that they're talking about. So like, I love all these little the action sequences are great. The tank scene is great. The satellite at the end is great. So yeah, I think this is one of the best. I don't know where it fits. I guess when we get done with this, we're gonna rank them. But just asking me like a knee-jerk reaction, I think this is a top 5. Maybe it's at least
yeah, it's
top
definitely
10.
top half. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, I was really excited about this because I was really into Bond as a kid, and I was like keeping up with that news like after License to Kill, which I loved License to Kill, so I was just excited. Oh, when are they going to do the next one, you know? And then that kept getting dragged on. I remember when they finally announced they were doing this. I thought it was really cool. I was excited. I was also excited that Pierce Brosnan was going to get to do it. And I got to tell you, man, he is just, from the moment he enters that movie, like he is fucking James Bond. Like I don't think any of the actors have been that quick. And it probably has to do more with the writing and stuff like that too. He's a great actor, but I'm just saying like the writing helps. They actually knew how to write a Bond for him, I guess. They knew exactly what he was bringing to the table. Remington Steele might have kind of helped that too, because maybe, I don't know. But anyways, but it's amazing. Like, he's just got everything down like immediately, it seems like.
There's a scene too, it's in the trailer. I remember this because I used to watch this trailer a million times. It was one of those, they rocked up the Bond theme and they made it like one of those exciting super fast 90s trailers. And but there's a real brief cut of him when he's messing with that bomb, and there's like people shooting at him, and he's in front of that wall, and he kind of just like moves his head a little bit, like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of dodge that. That's no big deal. It's just bullets. No, like that scene right there tells you that he's Bond more than like anything. Like, you're exactly right. He immediately is Bond. It's so weird how they couldn't figure out Dalton really, but he comes in, Brosnan comes in and is just like the guy.
And I guess Live and Let Die is Roger Moore's. I mean, Roger Moore's pretty much into it, I guess, from the beginning. I mean, he'd be the closest. I mean, Connery's good in Dr. No, but they just change up Bond a lot between the first couple of films, which is understandable. But Brosnan just feels like he's always been the role, like he should have been. Like, I mean, and I mean, him being irritated and him saying that he would take it if they were going to give him the role because he felt like he had something to prove. I mean, he proved it, right? I mean, and these are all 4 of these movies are gigantic hits. Die Another Day might be like one of the biggest hits ever that didn't like have a follow-up with the same people. Like, Die Another Day makes so much money. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. But that trailer, though, is a good thing. I don't know. Now, I'm sure they had a full trailer. What I really remember and what got me really excited, they had a teaser, and they did do a bunch of fast cuts. So maybe this is the same thing. Maybe I'm thinking of this. But I just remember, like, there's, like, bullets hitting the screen, and I think that makes the 007. And there's, like, the movie guy saying something, like, it's, all this, blah, 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 through the history of time, something. And then they do the shots because you don't know what it is yet. You see the 007, and then Pierce Brosnan comes out and says something like, "Were you expecting someone else?" It's just so fucking badass.
Yeah, I remember that. No, I remember that. That was like a teaser trailer, but then they came out with the full version, which I believe starts off with the dam at the very beginning, and then like, but there's a lot. It's actually, if you guys want to look at it on YouTube, one of the best trailers. I mean, the 90s for such a fucking great decade for trailers, but it's a really great trailer, and like I said, they rock up that Bond theme where it's like amazing, and just a lot of like really cool flash editing through it and everything. But
weirdly, not the style of the Bond theme you hear in the movie, though. It's like Bond theme's better in the trailer.
Not at all. Yeah. But time has been kind to this movie for me, at least. Like I said, I don't think I was a big fan of this back in 1995, but over the years, every time I watch it, I'm stunned at like how much I like about it. And so in the end, good stuff.
Never mind. I'm not going to sing Linkin Park. Yeah, and I'll go back to that. I really don't remember what I thought in 95. The only thing I can remember is that opening was really cool. And then he jumped onto the plane, and I remember thinking, oh, I don't know that this is going to work. But I do remember, like, I think I enjoyed it, because Famke Janssen's great. Speaking of which, though, man, much like Barbara Carrera, though, and much like a lot of Bond movies do with the females, she gets the most vicious death. Like, she gets pulled up into that tree. Like, I mean, it is rough.
Yep.
It kind of fits with the pain, I guess, her character gives other people. I also am curious, though, like, I feel like this thing where she can kill people during sex, like, I feel like that would get around. Like some people, it's like, but I don't know, power of boners, you might still be willing to take a chance. I don't know.
They do a really weird thing. I don't know if we send this in the video, but they do this weird thing where the first time we see her having sex and she squeezes that dude to death, he's like, I can't breathe, Xenia, I can't breathe. And then the next time we see him, he's got this giant smile on his face. He's dead, but there's a giant smile on his face. And I was like, that's not how he died. I mean, I understand that he was having sex with a very beautiful woman at the time, but he was also his oxygen got cut off.
No.
He wasn't smiling
No
during that. But it's a funny joke that they throw in there for sure.
No, it definitely is.
But yeah, that would definitely get around. but it reminds me of the other scene that I love in this, when they're in that spa or whatever, and she goes in there.
That's amazing.
And it's such a, I mean, like, every time you think about, like, some scenes and they're like, yep, I love that scene. I love that scene. I love that scene. There's hardly anything that I don't like in this.
I love that they kiss in that scene too. Like, that's such a, I don't know why, but it's something about that. Like, it's just perfect. Like, the fact that they, because I think they're both trying to kill each other, but at the same time, like, it's kind of hot. Like, you know, like they're, I mean, they're both attractive people, you know, so, and then he sticks her on that sauna. And I love, that's another thing. I just love the fighting and most of the action. I mean, you do notice the CGI in scenes. Absolutely you do. And it's got a lot of that mid-90s, you know, which, I mean, we still have that. I mean, that's still an issue in a lot of movies. No matter how much money is spent, it seems like, 'cause a lot of these MCU movies, just some scenes you're just like, what is this? Like, what am I looking at? But yeah, so that I really like most of the action. That tank scene, I always forgot how amazing that tank scene is. I mean, it's just so much fun. I had not seen this one in a long time. Like, it had been a while, but I think it's a movie that I love more, like, every time I see it. I did. There was one thing though. What was it about the Sean? Oh, I thought it was interesting though. Like knowing that Sean Bean is a traitor and he is bad. He's Giannis or whatever is his name. That's what he goes by. He's 006. And Giannis is not his actual name, but I think that's what he goes by. The leader of an organization, and so like the General Oryumov or whatever, he's in with him. Like, he's his underling. But like, Sean Bean kills a lot of people in that scene, including a scientist. Like, why did he just brutally murders a scientist? Like that I'm sure would have just put his hands up and said, "Can you just like handcuff me to this thing or something?" So I always thought that was kind of weird. I also, as much as I love, I do enjoy the gadgetry in this one, but that pin, I've always thought that was so weird that like that's the thing he get. Like, it's almost like Q knew that there was one of the guys on 006's team played with pins all the time. Because
right, yeah, it's such a weird, it's a very
scene,
weird moment, and but it's a great scene because he's sitting there counting all the like, is it set? Is it not? Is it set? Is it not? So it's like a really like
and
really
I love
scene.
Even like. And I don't know if this is what you're supposed to do, but this is the first time I ever thought about it. But like, Sean Bean has got a gun pointed at Bond, and he looks at Bond's face and sees Bond looking over there, and then he looks too, which I think was a great move, because you could see he's like, okay, something's going on. Like, I don't know what it is.
I also like, by the way, that it is the Alliance Cossacks.
Yes.
That's how they go by. That's what Sean Bean's character is he's upset about the British treatment of the Alliance Cossacks. I also love too when they go up in, like, after Bond and Natalia they get into that elevator right after, they get in the elevator right after that, like he gets that explosion and everything. And he goes, "Can he crack your code?" And she goes, "Probably." It's not one of these things where she's like super. She's not sitting there going, "Oh, I'm like the best," or she's not surprisingly amazed, like one of the best hackers there is. It's so funny how honest that is when he goes, "Do you think he can crack Boris can crack your codes?" And she's like, "I don't know,
love
probably."
That's a really funny moment, like a legit funny moment when she's trying to figure out his password, and you see the screen, and she's just typing in like butt, ass. Because for some reason you've seen this, Alan Cumming plays Boris. He's like him and Natalia work together at this like Soviet Arctic station or something. I don't really know exactly what they're doing, but he always comes up with like really like pervy passwords and stuff, and he gives them riddles like they're right in front of you and can open very large doors. And then it turns out to be knockers. But then this one ends up being chair. It's like it's not even like it's. But I just love that you see that shot. She's just typing all these like versions of butt in.
It is funny that she's doing all those words, but I'm like, don't you remember this was a 5-letter word?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like
I forgot about that.
I was sitting there like thinking, God damn, it's a 5-letter word. Why are you putting the 4 in anyway?
And her character is not written great. I think Isabella Scorpico brings some stuff to that performance. I don't know how great an actor she is. I mean, she hasn't been in much, but I think she makes it better than it is on the page. Because like the fact that she just falls for Bond so easily was annoying. And
it's like a history with all these women, and then it leads to the whole thing where is it Coltrane? I can't remember who it is. No, it's Joe Don Baker who's like, Have you checked her out? And he's like, yeah, head to toe. And I'm like, okay, all right. You guys were doing fine until that.
And then the Sean Bean character, who I like. I think he's a good villain. I don't know where I'd rank him. I think I like Davi better and stuff, but I like him. He's good. He's a perfect villain for them trying to like reestablish this franchise. Like I like the idea. It also feels very Mission Impossible 3. I almost kind of wonder if like Abrams took it from that kind of a little bit, because it's the pissed off former agent. It feels like his country betrayed him. But there's that scene where, oh God, what was I? Oh, there's a scene on the train. He gets like all rapey with Natalia. I'm just like, why did you feel the need to do this?
You didn't need to do that. And he even has that horrible line about we used to share everything, including women, and like, hey, you didn't need to do that. If it was a part of the character from the beginning, you'd be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But like this comes out of nowhere.
Oh, absolutely. Although, to be fair, he's probably not trying sex with Famke Janssen because she could kill people.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
But yeah, and then the other thing, there's something about that scene. It's we haven't really talked about the plot. And the plot on IMDb is stupid. It says, years after a friend and fellow 00 agent is killed on a joint mission, a Russian crime syndicate steals a secret space-based weapons program known as Goldeneye, and James Bond has to stop them from using it, which is the basic plot. That's true. There's this helicopter that like factors in. Yeah. But Sean Bean is him and Bond, I guess, were really good friends. He was 006 to his 007. They went on missions together. He thought he had died. In the opening scene, like he thinks that 006 gets killed, and then he finds out 9 years later that was just a setup, and that was to make it look like he was dead.
He gets mad too that he set the bomb for 3 minutes and not 6 minutes, and which is weird.
Which I love that line. I love that line where he's like, I gave you these same 6 minutes you gave me.
Yeah. And then he knows immediately what that means, you know?
Yeah. Because she's like, what does that mean? We've got 3 minutes. But I love that scene in the cemetery. I think it's a cemetery where he first finds out that Sean Bean's alive. And that scene's great. But then there's another scene towards the end where Sean Bean goes on this other monologue, and he makes these comments like, how many martinis have you drank to drown out the sorrow or drown out your victims? And like, how many, does sleeping with all these women help you with the fact that you've killed so many others? I don't know. It's something like that. And there's something about that. It's like, maybe it's partly because I feel like we've already had this talk, and now we're just kind of doing it again. You're just adding new things into it. I don't know. It's always come off as weird to me, that part.
But I guess the other part of this is like, well, the first part of it is they want to take control of this Goldeneye weapon in that Russian hacker facility or whatever. I guess at least to test it or whatever, and then they use it, and it destroys the entire place. They use the EMP thing, and it destroys the entire place. And it's like the MiGs that were sent to come after the helicopter, they're also they also blow up in the middle of that. And then you find out, there's a second one. There's a second Goldeneye or whatever that they can use, a second satellite or whatever that they can use. And then and that one is Sean Bean wants to this is like old Goldfinger type stuff where he wants to make it where the entire bank record of London is gone. So I think he's not trying to destroy things physically. I think he's just trying to reset everything basically, and I think he's using that Goldeneye to do that, where he's just trying to pulse out all of the bank records there are, something like that. So that's his big mission there. It's got some very classic Bond-esque Bond villain type of things in it.
I will say also, I think making it be a former friend of his that not only does Bond feel betrayed, but he feels what is his name? Alec, right?
Yeah.
Alec feels betrayed by Bond too in some ways, and so I get why, because we always have that thing where why don't they just shoot Bond? But I get it makes sense. I mean, Alec, that he would try to trap him in that train and blow him up, just like he tried to blow up him. There's stuff like that. I will say, and there's also that scene where I remember, because I forgot what actually happens, but there's that scene where they try to kill him in that helicopter, and they escape. And then they get caught again by soldiers. And I'm sitting there thinking, why didn't they just fucking shoot him? But then I forgot that was actually the Michigan guy or whatever. That wasn't, because he doesn't know that, Oryumov is betrayed him. So that was it. And that turned out to be a really interesting scene. So I thought they did a much better job of at least they did a better job. I mean, sometimes it's still kind of silly. You could have just shot him, but they did a better job of handling stuff like that. And I think having Sean Bean's motive be what it is, I think that probably helped in that scenario. Whether they intended that to help or not, but that was just something I noticed. No, I'm with you. It's definitely, I'm pretty sure it's his best. It's Brosnan's best film. I mean, I haven't seen the next two in a long time. And I know The World Is Not Enough has gained a big fan, I don't know big, but it's gained a fan base. I couldn't tell you anything that happens in Tomorrow Never Dies. I might not. I seriously don't know that I've seen that since the theater.
I don't think I have.
But it'll be fun. I always forget Michelle Yeoh's in that, so that'll be fun. I hadn't really.
Yep.
That might have been. I mean, that was definitely before Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So that might have been she was in I had seen her in Jackie Chan movies and stuff. But I think that might have been her first
Super
big
Cop,
American
I think
movie
was the first time I saw her. I think it was Super Cop. No, was it?
Yeah, Super Cop. Yeah, which I think is actually one of the police story movies. But it was called Super Cop here. So love her. So, but that'll be next week. But and I love this script. I love the dialogue. There's so and it's just Joe Don Baker's got some good quips, and Robbie Coltrane, and you get these actors that are good at it. They can go back and forth.
I'm sorry, Robbie Coltrane even talked about how there's that line that he says is Walter PPK 7.75 millimeter. I only know 3 men in the world who have ever used this, and I've killed 2 of them. And he says I love awesome. Saying a line like that.
I bet. Late Robbie Coltrane too, sadly. But yeah, no, there's that. There's even, like we said, that scene with Q is really good. I love that bit where it's what does he say? He says, I think I wrote this one down. Oh, it was that they always said the pen is mightier than the sword, and then Q says, thanks to me, they were right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just real crack. It's just real crackly dialogue. It feels almost more like Sorkin or David Mamet or somebody wrote it.
Yeah.
And then obviously we already talked about that. You don't need the gun commander, and then Brosnan saying I gave him the limp, and I don't know. And then that whole scene with Elm, where Elm's almost doing a haiku or something, but she's you're a misogynistic dinosaur, relic of the Cold War.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So I think they do a really good job of actually establishing him in this time frame. I think they do a much better job than let's say Diamonds Are Forever did with him being in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
or For Your Eyes Only did with him being in the 80s. I think they definitely established that he can coexist in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
even though the action movie has changed a ton. They give a little bit of that, but then they also throw in some of the old, and it just kind of, I don't know, it works into this really beautiful thing that I don't recall any of the other three do. I know one of them doesn't for sure, but I don't recall the next two being able to quite capture that, even though I think they make quite a bit more money than this one. But that's usually how this stuff goes now with franchises, which is the weirdest thing, because I remember when sequels used to make less, and now it's like, it's really weird if a sequel doesn't make more.
Right.
I don't get it anymore. But sequels are different now too. They're not just 80s sequels were just like, oh, that movie made some money, let's get another one out really quick so we can get what little we can from these
Right.
So you ended up with like Jewel of the Nile and shit like that. But no, I don't know what else to say about it. I'm on the same page with you. It was really fun watching this one again. And it's fun. Like, I like Daniel Craig. I like some of those films, but like, I do sometimes miss this kind of Bond film. And it's dark too, though. Like, it's not just, it's entertaining, but it's not afraid to like go to places. Especially with like the Famke Janssen character. I mean, she gets the shit beat out of her, but she beats the shit out of people too. So I mean, it kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah.
But I do think this was just kind of fun, and I've heard people say Pierce Brosnan is their favorite Bond, and I hadn't watched this in a while, so I'm always like, really? But then I watched this, I'm like, no, I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's never bad, even if the movies are. I don't remember him ever being bad. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we get to our rankings?
Nope. I think we've said everything we need to say about these movies until it comes out and people are like, I can't believe you didn't talk about this or something like that, whatever it is. I will say this though, it was interesting, kind of a retrospect type of thing. The satellite that's in this movie, the very end of the movie where they're in quote unquote Cuba, but it's Puerto Rico. The Arecibo satellite or whatever is what this is, and you see this later in Contact. Just before Ellie gets her funding from John Hurt in the movie.
Oh, okay.
They're at that place, and that's where she gets shit canned by Tom Skerritt. Because there's a very distinct corridor that they walk down that's very, like, if you're a Contact person, you'll know what I'm talking about. But that satellite apparently collapsed or broke down or something a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and there's been discussion about rebuilding it, but it's apparently defunct, or it's definitely not operational. It may have even just collapsed. So who knows?
That's a movie that for some reason I've been thinking. I just haven't watched it in a long time, and I've been thinking about rewatching it. So, but I am a fan of it. I mean, I love the movie. It's great. Yep. That's interesting. I did not realize that. I can see it now though, that it's the same one. But yeah, so we like Goldeneye, but we're gonna rank our film, and we're gonna rank this film in 5 different categories. Our scale will be based on something that Bond holds near and dear to his heart, as long as they are shaken and not stirred, and that would be martinis. So for each category, we rank from 1 to 5 martinis. 5 being the best damn liquid that has ever passed your lips, and 1 being the well liquor you had to settle for or were too drunk to care that night. So we've talked a lot about this, but just overall rating for like the movie, the story, your overall feeling toward it. What would you rank that?
This is a 4 for me here. I think this is just pretty much uniformly excellent all the way through. There's, I guess, a couple of hiccups here and there, but I mean, honestly, it's about the best you can ask for. Yeah,
I'm a 4 too. I think the only reason I can't get to 5 is because it is. I mean, it's not like because it's the 17th film in a franchise, but it also kind of is because like it doesn't. It's not like really breaking new ground in any way, right? Like it's still like kind of, it still feels very much like a Bond movie. Like it doesn't really break from tradition. it adds things, I think, but it's kind of deep seated in that. So you do have some issues, like obviously like the Natalia character ends up not being very interesting just because, you know, most of the female characters that aren't the bad guys aren't in these movies. So stuff like that. But I mean, it's just, and also like Martin Campbell is a super competent action director. Like he knows how to direct around a budget, but he's also not like, he's not really adding a ton to it, I guess. I don't know. I don't mean that mean. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, it's a movie that's just like, it's an extremely competent action Bond film. It's like, you know, it's right there at the top, but I just can't quite get it to 5, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't either. It's not. It's not. Yeah, it could be the score. But it's. I don't know. I mean, you definitely need. Yeah, you definitely need to have somebody as competent as Martin Campbell to make this movie. But I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know what that is. What you know, whether it can be a better movie in some way other than just a couple of tiny things here and there. I don't know.
And he directs the fuck out of Casino Royale. So, I mean, obviously he can really direct. Yeah, I'll probably take some of that out. I feel bad when I said that. But, no, I like him a lot. And we've had, like, pretty big directors, like, jump in these franchises. Like, Sam Mendes has directed one or two. So like you always hear that, like wouldn't it be cool if Tarantino did one, or wouldn't it be cool if you know, I don't know, Christopher Nolan? But then you're kind of like, yeah, but they would also probably be like limited a little bit because they still have to make like a Bond film.
I mean, they definitely would be. I mean, you're working in somebody else's sandbox, and
exactly.
Yeah,
but this is definitely the most amazing 17th film ever in a franchise. So yeah, but it's definitely a 4. As far as the Bond, the performance, which is our second one, I actually think I'm just going to give this a 5.
Yeah, same here.
Brosnan's really good.
Same here. There's nothing else that he could do with this, and it's perfectly well. It's great. So,
like even the lines that are not great, like he delivers very well. Like I will mention this though. I think I mentioned this on Slack the other night, but I watched this last night, and yesterday we all were on a thing together, and we were talking, all the Cinemasins people, and you guys were talking about Zoolander. And I swear to God, like Brosnan does like Blue Steel. Like there's like some of these close-ups of like his face.
Yeah, like, I was thinking more along the lines of the character that Ben Stiller plays in Tropic Thunder at the beginning.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah, whatever that they do, like they make fun of how many sequels he's made of it, where the world is always, but he's always like all the trailers are always Ben Stiller like looking up into the sky with this like you know.
The villain and the henchman. I mean, so we've got quite a few villains here. We've got Sean Bean, Alec. We've got the General. We've got Alan Cummings. I guess Boris would count as a villain. And then obviously we've got Xenia on the top. And all of them are good. I don't have an issue with any of them, really.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I think this is a 4 for me. Like Sean Bean's character isn't, you know, he's not over the top like a lot of the villains that we've seen over the years, but I like his motivations more than I like most villains that I've seen in this. Xenia Onatopp, of course, one of the like that's an all-time Hall of Fame performance, and it's so with it, even though it's like randier and more sexual or whatever than any other Bond villain, it fits so well with all the other ones back in the day, you know, like the Jaws of the world, and the, you know, who's in
Grace Jones.
Yeah, Grace Jones, but who's the dude who
Odd Job.
Odd Job. He falls in with an Odd Job, and so like there's a lot of, she fits in a lot with these unusual abilities to kill people with just weird just these weird abilities to kill people. So
it's perfect casting, and that doesn't happen often. Like, not as often as you would think. Like, I mean, I didn't really see like who else had been offered that role. Which, by the way, we kind of forgot to talk about like who else was offered. Oh no, we did. No, I don't think we talked about who was offered Bond other than Mel Gibson. But she was. I mean, I don't know. I mean, she was perfect the way it was written. I can't see anyone else doing that role.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty rare. I mean, and maybe they could have, like, I don't know, maybe Michelle Pfeiffer could have come in here and done it. I have no idea.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm just glad it's her. Mm-hmm. And like I said, she has had a hell of a career. I mean, she still works. I mean, she's been working consistently for however 27 years, 28 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like I wish she had gotten more like.
Does seem like she's been shortchanged a bit, even though she's worked for.
Yeah, like I don't know who the other like maybe Sandra Bullock. I don't know who the other actress is that kind of like took stuff away from her, because you always hear that, right? Like these people are always up for the same parts, and you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. She's awesome in this.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, I'm 4 though. I don't know why I'm not 5. I think the Sean Bean character. I mean, the General and Boris. I mean, they're fun, but they're not like they don't really. They have their scenes, I guess, but I don't know. I'm just giving them a 4.
I don't know.
4's good.
Is some,
4's a good
I think
rating.
5 for me would be something where you just really feel the threat. You really feel like it's like a Christoph Waltz, maybe. You know, later on.
Oh, that's a good point.
Or Javier Bardem, like one of these one of these singular villain characters, where Bond is still doing this thing where there's like they're sort of separating all the villainy into one, like into all these different characters and everything. I don't know. It's I don't know why it's not 5 either. It's might as well be 5, I guess, but like it's a 4. And if you ask me, it's a 4. There's something a little bit missing, but not much.
Yeah,
missing.
I agree. The gadgets and the gizmos, I'm actually going to give this a 4 too. There's a lot of fun stuff in this. I think the stuff with, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know, somewhere between a 3 and a 4, I would say.
Yeah.
But like the pen ended up being involved in that really cool scene, and then there's the cars and
the little watch. With
I love when Joe Don Baker takes the BMW and Bond's like, don't push any of the buttons.
Yep. And then you have like the watch with the little laser. I don't know if he uses that. Yeah, he uses the watch.
Oh yeah, he cuts the bottom of the train so they can they can get out. So it's stuff that's like useful. I mean, the pen's a little silly just because of how it ends up being used. Like it's just one of those. And then also I'll count that Naked Gun scene because that scene's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just everybody's like getting like there's all this stuff blowing up and. I mean, it's insane. There's no way a workplace would do that, but it's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fun. So I somewhere between 3 and 4, but I'll say 4.
Yeah,
how about you?
I'll probably go. Yeah, I think I'll go 3 with this.
I think
just because
this is definitely what we're thinking of when we think of Bond gadgets. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're really like excited to bring these back into the fray, essentially. So.
And then the last but definitely not least, the song.
Yeah,
the Tina Turner song. I'm not talking about the fucking song.
The Tina Turner song is a 4 for me. I think this is a really, really well done. It's sort of a throwback to the Shirley Bassey stuff. So I really like it. It's not one that really just overwhelms me with greatness, but it really does the job, especially after that opening sequence and everything. And like you said, that dun dun dun. You know, and just Tina Turner's voice is incredible, even at
it's amazing.
The age that she's singing it at this point. So
yeah, and I mean, it does feel like a throwback. So that could partly be part of why. But I'm giving it a 4 too. But also, like, unlike we were talking about this about License to Kill, where you had a great song, but it didn't fit with the movie at all. Like this fits perfectly.
Yeah.
This blends in great. I wish but that was another thing. The score didn't really use like any of the song either. Like, and that's a lot of the time what the Bond scores do. And I think that would have helped this film score, but whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I'm sure that dude's super cool.
I'm sure he is.
Oh, I hope he doesn't listen to this. But, actually, no, I do. He might not be alive. I don't even know.
I don't know.
Eric Serra. But anyways, that's it. We can't really talk about a book. There's no book that this is based on. The only thing it's based on is that it has the same name as Ian Fleming's house. So,
yep.
Thank you for joining us this week. We hope you'll join us again next week. We'll be talking about Tomorrow Never Dies, which I am almost positive I haven't seen since the theater. So that'll be an interesting watch. I do know people that like it. So I just, it's just, for me, it wasn't that memorable, I guess. So
I don't remember a thing about it.
Yeah. I know Jonathan Pryce is the bad guy. I know Terry Hatcher's in it.
Totally forgot.
I think it's Jonathan Pryce. Isn't that the guy?
Yeah, it's Jonathan Pryce.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, before we go, we have social media. You can reach us on Twitter. We are at GoldSpy007. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter. I am at SamLoomis13. You can email us at golddiamonddeath007@gmail.com. And if you like this podcast and other things under the Cinemasins brand, we also have a Patreon you can join at patreon.com/Cinemasins. And if you have a second to leave us a 5-star review at your podcast listening app of choice, we would appreciate it. So until then, keep the martinis dry and shaken, the Baccarat shoe moving, and the Aston Martin fully gassed. This is Chris Atkinson and Jonathan Watkins signing off, and we will see you next mission.